Good morning and welcome to Morning Joe right here on J&J Media Network, Facebook Live, Twitch TV, Twitter, and on YouTube. I'm Jonah Malkin with you every single Monday and Wednesday morning, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 to 11 Central, and 8 to 9 a.m. Pacific. Got a great show for you tonight. A lot of Texans today, a lot going on. J.J. Watt was released. I'm going to lay out some of the best options and locations, destinations that he should pursue. Some news in the NBA as well, and a finish in Daytona 500 that I'm going to recap that you are not going to want to miss. That is going to make my Malkin's moment, so make sure to stay tuned for all of that. So, got to start in the NFL. So, J.J. Watt and the Texans have mutually parted ways. This was something that J.J. Watt had formally requested and asked the Texans owner, Cal McNair, about wanting to be released by the Texans to pursue a Super Bowl championship. And to the credit of the Texans, they granted his wish. They could have traded him away to hold on and try and receive some draft capital to maximize that opportunity. They said, you know what? We're finally going to do one righteous thing for you here and let you go. And when you think about different athletes over this past decade and who are the most revered in their respective cities, there are a few guys that come to mind, and J.J. Watt is obviously one of those guys. But here's the interesting thing. When you go to a steakhouse, typically the steak is the star of the dish, is the star of the meal. That's what draws in the customers. That's what fills the seats, fills all the tables. That's what induces the customers to buy that extra bottle of wine, to order those extra sides. They're the star. They're the reason why the restaurant is successful. And when you think about practically every single NFL franchise, the quarterback is typically the star of the franchise. They're what draw in the rest of the crowd, the rest of the fans to come watch the game. They're why other players want to come play for their organization. But when you think about the Texans organization, you think about the Texans franchise, the guy that has personified the Texans organization, the stake of the Texans franchise over the past decade, hasn't been Deshaun Watson, it's been J.J. Watt. J.J. Watt has been the ultimate professional. You look at this guy, he's the most righteous and virtuous NFL player maybe we've seen in the last decade. The ultimate leader, 3-time Defensive Player of the Year, a 5-time first-team All-Pro, 5-time Pro Bowler. Again, 3-time Defensive Player of the Year. That's only been achieved by 3 other guys, including Watt, by Lawrence Taylor and Aaron Donald. This is a guy in J.J. Watt who's off the field endeavors, you could argue, have surpassed his on-the-field accomplishments. He's been the sack leader twice. He's recorded over 101 sacks, the most for the Texans franchise, 25 forced fumbles, the most for the Texans franchise, the most tackles for the Texans franchise. And in his first 5 seasons, he recorded 74.5 sacks, the most during that stretch for any NFL player. And yet, when we think about J.J. Watt, most people, to his credit, don't even think just about his on-the-field accomplishments. They think about how exemplary of a person he was off the field. A guy that won the Walter Payton Award in 2017, a guy that after Hurricane Harvey decimated the entire city of Houston, raised over $37 million in his donations. A guy who helped rebuild over 1,100 homes, provided over 239 million meals to families that were struggling, has helped over 1,000 schools, middle schools. And when you think about J.J. Watt and you think about the past decade in sports, what guys define the past decade in sports, J.J. Watt is synonymous with the 2010s. He just is. That's not only because of how dominant he was during that stretch, but the impact that he had on the city of Houston and in sports. He really has just been exemplary. And again, you look at his foundation, and right when he got released, there was a flood of $99 donations paying homage to his jersey number, 99. And so what's remarkable is that this officially kind of is the turning over a new leaf signal for the Houston Texans. This is the official changing of the guard right now. Because when you have a staple of your franchise, the face of your franchise, not your quarterback, a defensive end, now get released, you're basically wiping away all of that respect, all that reputation that you have. And I'm going to delve into briefly the current situation with Deshaun Watson, but J.J. Watt, he has been the ultimate Houston Texan. And I remember in 2019, I went to the University of Wisconsin. J.J. Watt was the commencement speaker at my graduation. And he delivered pretty much an off-the-cuff speech. And what was fantastic about it was he told us how he was bombarded by people wanting to offer their assistance and helping him write it. And he said, listen, people want to hear J.J. Watt. They want to hear the authentic, the real me. They don't want to hear someone else's speech given vicariously through him. And that's been his persona. When he's been Houston, he's been real, he's been authentic. He's given that organization everything. He's battled through injuries. He missed an entire season with a shattered leg. He's undergone a number of shoulder surgeries. He missed most of the season with a pec injury that he was having to deal with. So, yes, he's been a little bit injury prone over the last 5 years, and last year was just the second season since 2015 that he was able to play a full 16-game slate. But what this guy has meant to this organization goes way beyond just football, and that should be commended when we think about J.J. Watt moving forward. And he is a fantastic player and someone who's already garnering tremendous attention. And that's where we transition to, because naturally the next question was, well, which teams should pursue J.J. Watt? And in my opinion, the real question should be, which teams should J.J. Watt express interest in? And I know there's been a lot of hypotheses thrown out, a lot of recommendations and suggestions as to where they think he should go. But the reality is, the first couple teams that showed interest that were the Pittsburgh Steelers, obviously, the Green Bay Packers, the Bills, Browns, Titans, Seahawks, among others. I think it's been reported at least 12 teams have shown interest in J.J. Watt. And so for me, I decided to take a look at which of those teams should he actually consider playing for and which ones I would recommend and I would like to see J.J. Watt play for. So the interesting thing is this. The odds-on favorite for a team to land J.J. Watt has been the Pittsburgh Steelers. Everyone's been talking about, oh, he should go to the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he's going to reunite with his brothers, T.J. Watt and Derek Watt. It's a match made in heaven, right? The Steelers have built their identity on the defensive side of the ball. That's what they're known for. That's what they pride themselves on, is on being one of the best defensive teams ever. You look at those Terry Bradshaw Super Bowl runs, the defense is what primarily carried the team. So that's the Steelers' calling card. Here's why I don't think why J.J. Watt should go to Pittsburgh. I do not believe he should go join the Steelers. Yes, he's got the brother connection. He has that family reunion. That's all great. But if you look at the Pittsburgh Steelers, one of the biggest reasons, or one of the biggest impetuses for J.J. Watt's decision to be released by the Texans, he wants to pursue a team that will give him the best chance to win a Super Bowl. That's what he was prioritizing his decision on. The Pittsburgh Steelers right now, yes, they have a great defense. So you would probably be able to get some playing time, especially with the uncertainty surrounding Bud Dupree. He was a sack menace, but he tore his ACL. He's a free agent, not sure if he's going to be retained by the Steelers. He might go elsewhere. But the reason why he shouldn't join the Pittsburgh Steelers is because, first of all, the Steelers are $15.5 million over the cap. So he'd have to sign for the vet minimum. Now, maybe he's willing to do that, but the Steelers have no money to offer him essentially whatsoever. And you're in the AFC, so you'd have to battle through the Chiefs, the Bills, the Ravens, potentially the Titans, just to get a crack at reaching the Super Bowl. And the biggest issue with the Steelers last year was not their defense, even with the absence of Bud Dupree. Their defense was stellar. Their biggest issue was on the offensive side of the ball. They couldn't run the football. Big Ben couldn't complete passes down the field. How is J.J. Watt filling in on the defensive side going to address any of those issues? It's not. And so, yes, it might buffer the Steelers' defense, and it might strengthen a strength, but it's not addressing any of the issues on the offensive side of the ball, which are what limited this team in the first place last year. It was their offensive woes. It wasn't their defense that inhibited their ability to win games. So that's why he shouldn't go to the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I'm not really sure why it's being so highly encouraged for him to go play there. That's not going to give him the best chance to win. Here are the three teams that will give him the best chance to win in order of least to best fit, even though I think they're all pretty good fits. The first is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Seems like the obvious pick. Not sure why pundits, media members haven't been talking about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers a lot. Pros, you're joining a loaded team, a loaded defense, a team that just won the Super Bowl. And with the uncertainty surrounding Shaq Barrett, if he decides to leave and he's whisked away due to some team throwing a boatload of money at him, J.J. Watt would be able to play there and be able to contribute. He'd fill in nicely. And he honestly wouldn't necessarily be asked to do too much. You'd be playing with Tom Brady, and you would guarantee yourself a really good shot at winning and reaching a Super Bowl and then winning it. But obviously the flip side is you're joining a team that just won the Super Bowl. And J.J. Watt is the ultimate competitor. He has a tremendous amount of pride. Is that something that he would be willing to do, to just basically join the bandwagon of an already established team? And I think, given how competitive he is as an individual, he probably wouldn't want to just hitch his wagon to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I do think that he's got enough pride where he says, hey, I really want to be valued as a reason for helping our team get over the hump. But it's still a good fit, nonetheless, still a great fit in Tampa Bay, and they would gladly have him, and he'd have a great chance to win. And that's what leads to the second option, which is the Kansas City Chiefs. The argument for the Kansas City Chiefs is, listen, hey, we didn't win the Super Bowl last year. You could join us, kind of reminiscent of that Kevin Durant-esque move, where it pretty much just put the Warriors over the top. Now, J.J. Watt isn't in the same ilk at this stage of his career as Kevin Durant was when he joined the Warriors. But as far as adding value to a team that needs it, Kansas City Chiefs, their defense was the biggest issue. Was the biggest issue. Obviously, the offensive line was their biggest issue in the Super Bowl. But the prevailing issue throughout the entire season was their defense. And you pair J.J. Watt with Frank Clark and Chris Jones, they would be the ultimate complement. I think they'd complement each other extremely well. And so that seems like a great fit. Kansas City ranked 19th in the NFL in sacks per game last year. He recorded 5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, a return touchdown last year in Houston. So he would be able to come in and give them a needed boost and a needed pass rusher, which is what they need. Because think about it. Tampa Bay, they were doing a great job of protecting Brady in the Super Bowl. The Chiefs had 1 sack registered in the first quarter, and that was it. Brady had a clean pocket. And so those are the pros. The cons of Kansas City is, listen, you're joining a team that reached the Super Bowl. And yes, he might not necessarily be asked to do as much in Kansas City because you've got Mahomes to take off that pressure, to take on that pressure, to shoulder that burden for you. But again, the competitor side of him says, well, they just won a Super Bowl 2 years ago, or really last year if you consider the timetable. Do I really want to join that team? And that's why, to me, the best and most obvious fit is the Green Bay Packers. This just feels like a match made in heaven. He's from Wisconsin. He'd be playing for his home team in the state of Wisconsin, the Green Bay Packers. It's an historic franchise, an historic organization that, quite frankly, their biggest ailment last year was their pass rush. And on their defensive side of the ball, getting guys to pressure opposing quarterbacks. The reason why the Packers lost to the Buccaneers, especially in that first half, they got annihilated in the first half, is because Brady had a clean pocket. J.J. Watt would start immediately for this team. He'd be able to come in right away. And again, it just feels like a perfect match because the Packers have a tremendous secondary already. Now, I know it got exposed during that one end of the half play to Scotty Miller when Brady hit Scotty Miller for a 39-yard touchdown. I get it. But for the most part, their secondary has been really, really strong all year last year, and applying pressure to the opposing quarterback is their biggest need. Now, the only con to joining the Packers is the NFC is loaded. Tampa Bay Buccaneers are obviously there, and they will only improve and be better next year. The Rams traded for for Matthew Stafford, so that's going to make them much more formidable. We don't know if the 49ers are going to be able to trade for Deshaun Watson, but even if they don't, their defense is going to be fully healthy. I think Jimmy Garoppolo will still be healthy. Kyle Shanahan is still a tremendous play caller, tremendous coach. So the 49ers are going to be better. The Seahawks will be better, I believe, perhaps with a new offensive coordinator. So it's not a guarantee if you're if you join the Packers. However, I think from a sentimental perspective and where you can really feel like your contributions are being valued the most and be a direct result of the success of your team, the Green Bay Packers just makes the most sense if you're J.J. Watt. So that would be the team that I'd recommend that he joins. So we'll see what happens. Again, he is going to be, and already is, a highly sought-after free agent right now. Tremendous run, just 31 years old, so still has plenty of time to leave an imprint, and that's what he can do this season. So I'll be curious to see where he opts to go. And this is why, and then I'll leave the Texans alone because I want to change topics here, but I do think it is noteworthy that the owner, Mr. Cal McNair, the owner of the Texans organization, came out a couple days ago when actually trying to compliment J.J. Watt. Reporters asked him about Deshaun Watson amid all this trade speculation. What are they going to do? And Cal McNair basically said, this is about JJ. Deshaun's our quarterback. He's a Texan. We're not going to trade him. Now, I understand why Cal McNair wants to downplay all these trade rumors. I get it. Completely get it. And he even said there's a lot of misinformation out there. I'll leave it at that. And it was reported that Deshaun Watson was obviously unhappy when they hired the former executive at the New England Patriots, Nick Caserio, as the new general manager without consulting Deshaun Watson. And they had promised him that he'd be a part of the hiring process, or at least would be able to provide input on that decision, share some input, and they totally devalued that. And so that's where the frustrations lie, and it's just persisted for now what seems to be over a month of this issue. And it's understandable why, from McNair's perspective, he's saying, listen, Deshaun's our quarterback. Because here you've got one of the youngest and brightest quarterbacks and just stars in the NFL on your team. Deshaun Watson's just 25 years old. He's led your franchise to 2 playoff appearances in really 3 seasons. He's been a 3-time Pro Bowler, and he's coming off, despite the 4-12 record last year, he's coming off his his best statistical year last year, over 4,800 yards, led the NFL in passing yards, 33 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, completed 70% of his passes. Yeah, you don't want to let him go. The issue is right now, the Texans are in this precarious spot because they're basically in shark-infested waters right now, and all these other teams are smelling blood. And they know that we've got a distressed asset right now that we can take advantage of. They think they've got all the leverage. It's like you're walking into a car dealership and the car salesman's trying to sell you on this 2017 Mustang and trying to sell it to you for full price when you see it's all scratched up, it's all dinged up, the rear view mirrors are broken. Clearly, the car is not worth the full price. And sure, if you take it to a mechanic for a couple times, they'll fix it just as new, brand new. But no one's going to pay full price for it anymore. And that's the dilemma that the Texans are in, is they're trying to downplay these rumors to continue to elevate the stock of Deshaun Watson. Now it's already at an all-time high, especially given what the premium the Rams paid to acquire Matthew Stafford. But I still think that I understand what the Texans are trying to do. This just seems like inevitable that he's going to leave. And then to make matters worse, Deshaun Watson just came out and said that he doesn't really have much interest. He's not really intrigued anymore by the New York Jets, who are really the team that could have offered the best package for him, because he's got that no trade clause in his contract. So if he doesn't want to be shipped somewhere, the Texans can't do it without his consent. The 49ers and the Broncos have emerged as interests of him, which from his perspective, I'd rather go to the 49ers. I'll touch on that at a different time. But that makes matters worse, because those two franchises can't offer him the same type, or can't offer the Texans the same type of deal that a team like the Jets or even Miami could. Now, Miami's still on his list, but personally, I think the 49ers would be a better choice, but we'll see what happens. All right. Coming up in just a second, Terrell Owens made some controversial comments yet again about the Hall of Fame induction of Calvin Johnson. That's going to be coming up in 30 seconds. You're watching and listening to Morning Joe right here on J&J Media Network, Facebook Live, Twitch TV, Twitter, and on YouTube. Mondays and Wednesday mornings, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 to 11 Central, and 8 to 9 a.m. Pacific. So Terrell Owens enters the news again, and his name always seems to surface when Hall of Famers are inducted and the classes are announced. And Terrell Owens has always been a hot topic of controversy. Controversy has kind of followed him wherever you go. And people hold grudges. That's what we do. When you feel like you've been slighted, you never forget that. I remember in my English class in college, a professor literally gave me an A- on a speech of mine because she said that I delivered it too perfectly. It was delivered too perfectly that it came across as memorization and inauthentic, and I've never forgotten it. We hold grudges. We hold on to grudges when it feels like people have slighted us. And Terrell Owens was snubbed twice by the Hall of Fame selection committee, despite having one of the best wide receiver careers in NFL history. Here you have a guy who finished with the third most receiving yards in the NFL, 15,934 receiving yards, third most touchdowns, eighth most receptions, and he got snubbed twice. And the biggest issue, what he is most upset and frustrated with and took umbrage at, is the rationale and the logic behind the selection process. He doesn't understand that. And so he decided to make a statement when he eventually was a third ballot Hall of Famer. He decided to make a statement by accepting that golden jacket at the University of Tennessee in Chattanooga, at his alma mater, as opposed to going to Canton. And he's never gone to Canton precisely because he's had this gripe with the selection committee. And he even said that obviously he was a polarizing and abrasive player. We know his personality rubbed teammates and media members the wrong way. He came out and said this past weekend was further indication of why I wouldn't go. No disrespect to anybody that got in, but I just don't understand the process. Calvin Johnson got in on the first ballot. This has nothing to do with Calvin himself. The guy was a beast, but there's no justification when you have guys like Torrey Holt and Reggie Wayne on this year's ballot that have done equal or greater things. So, Terrell, you don't have to say no, you mean no disrespect, because first of all, you are kind of disrespecting Calvin Johnson. Now, I understand Owens, he's got credentials, 6-time Pro Bowler, 5-time first team All-Pro. Again, third most receiving yards in the NFL, third most touchdowns, 8th most receptions. But if you're wanting to criticize the selection committee, don't take a shot at a guy that was given the moniker of Megatron. I mean, this guy was a specimen and a half. Calvin Johnson may have had the most dominant 9-year stretch for any wide receiver. I mean, he ended up finishing 23rd most NFL receiving yards in just 9 years, over 11,500 receiving yards. And here you had a guy who was 6'5 rather, 240 pounds, could run a 40-yard dash in 4.35. This guy was the ultimate specimen and a half. And so I understand this unbridled anger and frustration that is not intended to be directed at Calvin Johnson. It's intended to be throwing shade at the selection committee, because from Terrell Owens' perspective, again, he's had controversy everywhere that he goes, and what sticks in his crow is the lack of transparency as far as what are the requirements, what's the barometer to get selected. Because if you go off statistics and production, he's saying to himself, well, guys like Torrey Holt and Reggie Wayne have had better statistical years and a statistical career than Calvin Johnson, and they weren't first ballot Hall of Famers, which that aspect is true. But again, I don't think it's necessary to throw Calvin Johnson's name in there just because you had a contentious relationship with players and media members that unfortunately cost you your first 2 ballots, your first 2 trips into the Hall of Fame. So again, Calvin Johnson in those 9 years, 6-time Pro Bowler, 3-time first team All-Pro. Like, this guy was an absolute monster. Again, given the moniker Megatron. So he had a fantastic career. I understand the frustrations of Terrell Owens. And again, he's just trying to point out the inherent flaw that exists with the selection committee. Because right now, he doesn't see that much logic and rationalism when it comes to who gets selected and who doesn't. But your TO, leave Calvin Johnson's name out of there. Again, I know you didn't mean for it. You didn't intend for it to disrespect or to denigrate Calvin Johnson's career in any way. Leave Megatron out of there. Keep your personal gripes directed at the selection committee. That's what I'd say about that. And speaking of controversy and individuals that have kind of epitomized controversy everywhere that he's gone, for as great of a coach as he is, Urban Meyer once again is muddling through another hiring controversy. Over the weekend, they hired the former Iowa strength and conditioning coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars team. They hired Chris Doyle, to be their new strength and conditioning coach. And a day later, he resigned due to all the backlash. And he said he wanted to resign because he didn't want to be a distraction in Jacksonville. Now, we know that Urban Meyer has dealt with distractions everywhere he's gone. Now, a lot of them have been self-induced due to his poor judgment and lack of judgment, which has been the mantra surrounding Urban Meyer everywhere he's gone. Is as great of a coach as he is, he does not judge character particularly well. That's been the knock on Urban Meyer. And obviously in 2018, when he was with Ohio State, he was suspended by the university due to an alleged domestic abuse accusation that was levied against his assistant, Zach Smith, who had domestically abused or allegedly domestically abused his wife. And the wife had reported it to Urban Meyer's wife, Shelly Myers, and Urban Meyer kind of just swept it under the rug. And we saw this. This was an issue that, again, persisted at Florida. Because in 2009, after they won the national championship, that same assistant, Zach Smith, at the time was a wide receivers coach, had allegedly abused his girlfriend, Courtney, who then is the same now, is still his wife somehow. And so that was overshadowing everything that was existing for Urban Meyer back at Florida. And now it's catching back up with him because a guy that he decided, and mind you too, that Chris Doyle was fired. Really, he decided to resign, and he left the Iowa program for using racial slurs. So all these nefarious situations and dealings, they always seem to surround Urban Meyer everywhere he goes. But the reason why this is important is because what it further elucidates is how winning cures everything. And his mantra throughout his career has been that it's always better to ask for forgiveness than to ask for permission, because winning cures all. This is a guy who has sported a 187 and 32 record as a head coach. He's won 85% of his games, 17-6 at Bowling Green in 2 seasons, 22-2 in 2 seasons at Utah, 65-15 in 6 seasons at Florida with 2 national championships, 83-9 in 7 years at Ohio State, over a 90% win percentage at the Ohio State University. As a coach, he's a tremendous coach. As a leader who can identify character well, that's where he's come up short. That's where he's come up short. And once again, I know he came out and he said that he should have given greater consideration to how his appointment may have affected all involved. You knew exactly who you were hiring. Don't say you should. You underwent a full vetting process. So it's not surprising that Urban Meyer is involved in another controversy. I'm just surprised that it took this soon into your new job. He hasn't even coached the Jacksonville Jaguars for 1 day, and he's already consumed in more controversy. Morning Joe right here, J&J Media Network, Facebook Live, Twitch TV, Twitter, and on YouTube. Mondays and Wednesday mornings, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 to 11 Central, 8 to 9 a.m. Pacific. I want to transition now to the NBA because a number of NBA games were played last night, and the Boston Celtics lost to the lowly Wizards 104-91. They've now lost back-to-back games to the 2 worst teams in the Eastern Conference. And I do think that this is telling for one particular reason. There's one salient point here that I want to hunker down on. Chemistry, in my opinion, is one of the most important aspects of life. The people that you work with, the pieces, how do they fit? How does everything coexist? Right? I love lions, tigers, polar bears, all dominant mammals. But a polar bear wouldn't thrive in the same environment as a lion or a tiger. Just wouldn't. And sure, you can make the argument that lions and tigers could coexist in their habitats, but you try sending a lion or a tiger into the Arctic, that ain't working. Pizza and pasta. I love Italian. That stuff's all great. I love chicken fried rice. I love lamb neck shawarma. But maybe the pizza and pasta work if we're sticking with the Italian theme. But chicken fried rice and lamb neck shawarma, that ain't a combo that's going to be working. I love all the flavors individually. So in theory, it should work. But when you combine it all together, it doesn't blend well. The biggest issue for the Celtics right now is that they're inconsistent. That's their biggest issue. It's not for a lack of talent. For some reason, this compilation of talent has not been able to peak together at the right time. And when you look at Kemba Walker, he said that their recent skid that we need to play harder. No. It's not that you need to play harder, because playing hard doesn't always equate to shooting well. And vice versa. And conversely, shooting well doesn't necessarily mean that you're playing hard. You can score 50 points like James Harden and not play a lick of defense during certain games. But when you've got a guy in Jason Tatum that scores 6 points on 3 for 14 from the floor, it's not that he wasn't playing hard. It's that he's inconsistent, or he was inconsistent in that game. And that's been the biggest derailment for the Celtics. Again, it's not that they don't play hard. I'm not really sure why Kemba Walker is saying you don't play hard. You're playing hard. You're competing. You're NBA players. You've got pride, but you're just inconsistent. And that's been the knock on them ever since they've kind of formulated this big three. Even when they had Gordon Hayward, all of their star players could not excel all together at the same time. And Kemba Walker is giving you 15.5 points per game, 4 assists on 35% shooting. I understand he's trying to work his way back from an injury, but he's got to be more consistent. And even in the playoffs, we saw, yes, he averaged 20 points per game, but he was hot and he was hot and cold. His production fluctuated. And we never saw those games where both Tatum, Brown, and Kemba Walker all went bonkers together. We hardly ever saw that. And so when I'm looking at the Celtics and we look at last night, and in that game, the big duo was Kemba Walker and Jaylen Brown, who combined for 51 points, while the rest of the team shot 12 for 51, a meager 23.5%, really a paltry 23.5% from the floor. Couldn't buy a bucket. Again, it's not for a lack of playing hard, just inconsistency. And then again, further highlights and exposes their lack of depth, because Marcus Smart wasn't playing. And as much as we've said, oh, wow, look at the Celtics, they've got so many talented wings, they're pretty thin after Marcus Smart when it comes to the wing position. So it's not that they don't have the talent. For whatever reason, I just don't think that this compilation of talent has been able to peak together at the right time. And they're 3 for 7 over their last 10 games. And right now, this is why I haven't been able to buy in fully, because I know Tatum is special. Brown's been playing like the best Celtic all season. And I like some of the pieces that they have. I love Kemba Walker. I truly do. Cardiac Kemba is iconic. His days at UConn, his playing days with Charlotte. This is a tremendous player that right now, all three of them just have not been able to play well. And outside of Peyton Pritchard, there's no one else stepping in for this team to contribute in a big way. So inconsistency and clearly a lack of cohesion is the biggest issue for the Celtics. That's what Brad Stevens is going to have to address moving forward. Okay, only going to touch on this for a minute. Not going to belabor this issue. I know so many people are going to be talking about this. But I do think it's noteworthy. Last night, the Lakers lost to the Denver Nuggets 122-105. Anthony Davis re-aggravated his right Achilles tendon, and he missed the second half. He had already missed 2 games earlier in the week to try and rehab and get that Achilles healthier and stronger. But this is very concerning if you're the Lakers. Now, the knock on Anthony Davis in years past was his inability to battle through nagging injuries. That was his biggest issue, was to be able to battle through these nagging injuries. And to his credit, last year, he stepped up and he played through a lot of that. You could attribute a lot of that to perhaps LeBron James and his presence there and kind of highly encouraging him, giving him knocks on the side. Hey, I know your ankle's a little tweaked. Let's play today. But again, LeBron is just having to shoulder more of this load. And while I am impressed with the way that he's been playing and he's the MVP frontrunner right now, the minutes continue to creep up. And now if Anthony Davis is going to have to sit another 2 weeks, this is troublesome for a Lakers team that, quite frankly, is trying to keep pace with the surprise team in the NBA, the Utah Jazz, who have won 18 of their last 19 games. They're sporting the best record in the NBA, 22-5, and they're solely in first place. The Lakers are trying to keep up with that, but I think what they have to do is take a step back and say, okay, we just need to be healthy going into the postseason. So I think they need to rest Anthony Davis. They need to rest LeBron a little bit more. Maybe he plays every game, but he's not having to exert himself quite as much. Maybe keep him on a minutes restriction, keep him under 30 minutes so he still plays, he's still active, still getting that run in. But they need to rest some of these guys because I understand they're trying to catch Utah, keep pace with them, and that they could easily kind of slip a little bit in the rankings if they lose a few. But that's what we kind of expected, was this team to take nights off. Now, granted, we expected LeBron to be the one to sit as opposed to Anthony Davis. But this is concerning because anytime you're dealing with an Achilles, that's not something you want to play around with. That's not something that you want to play around with. So that's my recommendation. That's what I think the Lakers should do, because that's worrisome moving forward. Your second best guy, they need both of those guys to be playing healthy and to really make any run at an NBA Finals, at a back-to-back championship. They need both of those guys, but especially Anthony Davis to be healthy to complement LeBron. Okay, this is something that I was super excited about because the All-Star game is going to be taking place in a couple of weeks, so I figured I'd get a head start and lay out the 5 players that I think will be first-time All-Stars this year, because there are 5. Specifically 5 players that I want to point out and shine. So here we go. Number 1 player is Devin Booker. Now, I understand that last year he technically was a replacement All-Star, replaced Damian Lillard, who was too injured to play. So that's when Devin Booker got the nod. But I think that this year Devin Booker actually gets an original nomination and an original acceptance into the All-Star game. This guy has just been a fantastic talent. He's just 24 years old. He's on a Phoenix Suns team that's 4th in the Western Conference, leads the team in points, 24.5 points per game, 4 rebounds, 4 assists. And in the last 4 games, he has scored 30 points 3 out of the last 4 games, shooting 57% over that stretch, which includes wins over the Milwaukee Bucks and the Philadelphia 76ers, the 2 best teams record-wise in the Eastern Conference. So we're finally getting a chance to lay our eyes on this kid, on this talent. Again, just 24 years old. The Suns are 17-9. Now, a lot of that you could say, again, should be attributed to the arrival of Chris Paul, and he has certainly been a tremendous influence on him. But Devin Booker has been balling out for years, and finally we're seeing him on this national stage getting a chance. So I think that he will finally earn his first real All-Star nod. That's number 1. Not to mention the Suns have won 6 straight games in addition. Number 2 Jaylen Brown with the Boston Celtics. Listen, I've said this before. He has been the best player on the Celtics this year. I understand that Jason Tatum is the more valuable asset, and I too believe, and I'm not trying to dispute that Jason Tatum is the best player on the Celtics, because he is. But Jaylen Brown leads the team in PR, is just a point under Jason Tatum for leading points per game, averaging 26 points per game, giving you 5 rebounds, 3 assists, 3.5 assists. He's shooting over 51% from the floor, 41% from the three-point line. This guy has been the ultimate two-way player. He's a great defender as well. He's starting to develop his own shot a little bit more, and the Celtics are 5th in the Eastern Conference. And I just think that right now, if it weren't for the consistent play of Jaylen Brown, he's been the most consistent Celtic all year. He's been the best player for him. If it weren't for his play, the Celtics wouldn't even be in the 5th seed as a 5th spot right now in the Eastern Conference, in my opinion. So I just have to give him credit, because what he's doing right now, especially sans Kemba Walker and the inconsistencies with Jason Tatum and Marcus Smart being out, he's been the one guy that has consistently produced for the Celtics. So he's my second first-year player. My third first-year player, or first-time All-Star, Julius Randle, the former Laker. I know the Knicks have been the sorry, moribund, stepchilds, the putrid, the rancid franchise, and anything you want to call them, the rotten franchise, anything you want to attribute. They've been the sorry franchise to the Brooklyn Nets over the last couple years, and really they've served as like the 5th fiddle in the state of New York, behind obviously now the Nets. You got the Yankees, you've got the Mets, you've got the New York Islanders, for crying out loud, and then you've got the New York Knicks. And when the Knicks lost out on the Zion sweepstakes and the KD Kyrie sweepstakes 2 years ago, their big offseason acquisition was Julius Randle. They signed him to 3 years, $62 million. And while we were all happy for Julius Randle that he got his money, it was laughable that the New York Knicks doled out that massive contract to Julius Randle. And to his credit, he's been balling out this year. And he's improved every year, and he's living up, if not exceeding, that contract, giving you 22.5 points a game, 11 rebounds, 5.5 assists per game for a guy who's shooting 47% from the floor, 39% from the three-point range. That's the biggest area of Julius Randle's improvement, is that three-point shot. He's above 80% on the season for free throws. He has scored 25-plus points this year in 13 games played. So the Knicks are the 7th seed in the Eastern Conference right now, and all of that is attributed to Julius Randle and the job that he's done, because he's been absolutely fantastic. And again, the Knicks were awful last year, and he's been the best player on the team. And Tom Thibodeau has done a nice job utilizing him. Yes, he's playing him a lot, but that's what you can do when you have young legs. And I think that Julius Randle right now, with the Knicks actually being in the playoff discussion as a 7th seed currently constructed, they'd be in the playoffs. I think you got to give credit to him. And right now, he's my 3rd projected first-year All-Star. At number 4, CJ McCollum with the Portland Trailblazers. I understand he's missed a lot of games, but when he's been out there, he's been like an all-star, giving you 27 points per game, giving you 4 rebounds, 5 assists, 47% from the floor, 44% from three. He's got a filthy handle, can shoot it from anywhere. He's a tough finisher, a great finisher around the rim. And this is a guy, again, that leads the team in PER. And part of the reason why I think that CJ McCollum is finally going to get in, not only is Portland a 5th seed in the Western Conference, but to make an all-star reserve spot, you're voted on by the coaches. And I think that he's paid his dues. The coaches want to reward him for his years of service and getting snubbed year in and year out. And it's tough because there's so many guards in the Western Conference, and Damian Lillard always gets the nod mostly. And CJ McCollum's never been recognized. I think this is finally the year that he breaks through. And again, I know he's missed a lot of time, but he's playing like an all-star right now. Portland's in the 5th seed. Okay, finally, my 5th and final first-year first-time All-Star is Zach LaVine, the Chicago Bulls. I don't want to hear any of this, oh, well, they're not winning. He has been balling out. This UCLA product has been carrying his weight and has been one of the most productive players in the entire NBA. 28 points per game. Come on, man. 5 rebounds, 5 assists. And I know what everyone's going to say. Oh, well, Zach LaVine just jacks up a bunch of shots. He's probably not efficient, Jonah. Yeah, he actually is. 52% from the floor, 43% from the three-point line, 86% free throw shooter. You can't say this guy hasn't been efficient from the floor. He's been absolutely tearing it up. His team just stinks, but it's not as a result of him not playing well or carrying his weight. And so when you're providing that eye-popping numbers off the bench, or not off the bench, but when you're not in the playoff picture, there are about 1 or 2 guys from every conference that can still make it. And Luka Doncic is the same way for Dallas. And again, I know it hasn't produced many wins, but Zach LaVine should get in there. Now, if I'm going to receive pushback and people are going to say, well, Jonah, you can't really throw in Devin Booker as a first-time All-Star because he was a replacement All-Star last year. While I don't agree with it, I'll say this. If Devin Booker, if you don't consider him a first-time All-Star, then I'd throw in De'Aaron Fox, who's been having a great game. I think he's right on the fringe of guys that could potentially make it. I just think that Devin Booker, because he was a replacement All-Star last year, I don't know if I'd consider that a real first-time All-Star. So, because De'Aaron Fox has had a tremendous season as well, but he doesn't have quite the eye-popping and stat-shattering numbers as guys like LaVine, like Luka Doncic have in their respective conferences. So I'm excited. I think those are the 4 guys. And again, the Kings also don't have enough of a record combined with those eye-popping numbers to justify it, in my opinion. But we'll see. Those are the guys that I think will make it. Okay. Final topic of the day, Malkin's Moments, my favorite segment every single week from the past week. There was a lot in the Daytona 500. I don't know if anyone watched that. Let me not even address the crash yet, which I'll get to. But there was a massive delay, an over 6-hour delay, rain delay at Daytona 500. And one of the drivers, Ross Chaston, he actually bought McDonald's for his entire crew. And so he drove in his race car up to a McDonald's and ordered this McDonald's for his entire crew. And you could see the cashier looking at him like, holy cow, wait, are you just coming right from the race? He said, yes. It was an awesome, awesome moment, a super cool moment. They had a camera guy there to document the entire moment. And that was great. And then at the actual race itself, listen, credit to Michael McDowell for avoiding the crash. There was a horrific last quarter turn of Daytona 500. There was a massive crash that took place between teammates trying to pass one another to win the race, and Michael McDowell avoided those collisions and managed to collect his first career NASCAR Cup Series win, especially in the Daytona 500. And he came in as a 100-1 underdog when the race began Sunday afternoon, and he won for the first time in 358 Cup starts. Edged out Chase Elliott, who won the Daytona 500 last year. So major shout out to Michael McDowell. And then at the AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am Golf Tournament, Daniel Berger won the tournament. He sealed the victory with a 30-foot eagle putt. To win on an eagle putt in a pro golf tournament is absolutely special. Finished 18 under 270 for his 4th career victory. Just a tremendous finish in a prestigious golf tournament at Pebble Beach in California. So that's all the time that I got for you. Thank you so much for joining me every single Monday and Wednesday morning, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 to 11 Central, and 8 to 9 a.m. Pacific. Morning Joe right here, J&J Media Network, Facebook Live, Twitch TV, Twitter, and on YouTube. I'm Jonah Malkin. Thank you so much for joining me, and have a lovely rest of your morning.